Toys, trains, and tools. Would you spend 6 years fighting over who has the rights to those things in your divorce? You might be sitting here saying, Erica, that sounds absolutely crazy. But the reality is we get lost in the battle. We dive deep into an area that we probably shouldn't be in, and we kind of sort of lose sight of what really matters. That's why I'm so excited to have today's guest on. We're going to talk through the do's and don'ts of divorce and how do you know what you really need to fight for and what you should just be letting go on so that you can move forward with your life. Welcome to the Crazy Ex-Wives Club, a podcast dedicated to helping women navigate the emotional journey that is divorce. I'm your host, Erica, and if you're trying to figure out life after the big D, welcome to the club. Whether you're contemplating divorce or dealing with the aftermath or any of the many phases in between, the club has got you covered. Each week, you'll hear stories from women who have been in your shoes. This isn't about spilling tea on divorce details. This is about giving you the tools to take control of your own healing journey. Listen in weekly for advice, tips, and tools to help you move through each stage of the process. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Crazy Ex-Wives Club. I'm your host, Erica, and today I have Leona Krasner with us. She is a managing partner at Krasner Law, where they do family law needs in New York and New Jersey. Leona, I'm excited to have you here. You have shared so many amazing stories and learnings, and I think this will be really helpful for the listeners because so often the questions come in, we tangle up the emotional process and the business process of divorce. And I think we're going to really walk the line right in the middle of how do we untangle that emotional process and what works and what doesn't work when you're trying to navigate the divorce process. So welcome.
Thank you so much. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we jump into some of the fun conversation topics, right? Like what to do and not to do in divorce, that's going to be a fun one. Tell us a little bit about how you landed where you're at, because I think that your perspective, there's lots of family law out there that is not unusual, but I think where you landed in your approach is a little bit different. And I love that part about you.
Absolutely. So I knew I wanted to be an attorney at the ripe old age of 7. Wasn't too sure what lawyers did back then, but gosh darn, I was going to do it. As I got a little older, I knew I wanted to help children. So then I went to law school where they told me get a job, any job in the legal sector. So I did that. Went to the Attorney General's office, learned a lot, but where I was staying until 6 or 7, making sure dotted the I's, crossed the T's, everybody else was not staying until 7 and thought I was kind of weird. So decided to go private, where I represented big companies, served on litigation teams, helping get cases ready for either trial or settlement. So what would happen is either one party would agree to give that other company lots of money, or one company would be ordered by a judge to give lots of money to another company. And I didn't feel as though I was helping any human whatsoever. And so then I decided to go into family law. Really looked into kind of how I could most help people discover that family law would be the perfect fit for me. I also got my undergrad degree in psych. Psychology is very interesting for me. And so that ties, I'd say, quite well into the family law realm. I launched my practice around 5 years ago and have been loving every single day since.
Yeah, I love that connection of the legal aspect, but the psychological aspect, because so often the behaviors that we're triggered to do are because there is a psychological underpinning that we are reacting against. And it shows up in divorce cases because we're triggered, we're hurting, we're trying to unwind a life together and future dreams that are no longer going to come true.
That's right. Very true.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about the do's and don'ts of what not to do in the divorce process. And for those of you guys listening along, know that we've got a lot of topics still dealing with the emotions. So this is not legal advice. This is how you go through the divorce process. But these are the big pictures of where we see people trip up and make mistakes. So the do's and don'ts. What do you have top on your list for us?
Okay. So let us start with the juicy don'ts. if someone is in a position where they're considering divorce, now reconciliation is always a possibility, and it may be a possibility in a certain person's case. I've had multiple clients who came to me, Leona, I want a divorce, and then we ended up having them reconcile, and they are happier for it. In one particular case, the woman had a restraining order against the man, and he decided to break the restraining order by getting her some Nutella because he knew it was her and the children's favorite. So on the one hand, romantic and darling. On the other, he did spend a day in jail. Okay. So follow the terms of the order. She did take them back and they are thriving and happier than ever. But first and foremost, if there are any orders, I as a lawyer need to say, kind of follow those or you may go to jail. Second, if it turns out that the divorce is really what somebody's looking for, this isn't about emotions. It is about what you want your outcome to be and what legal steps do you need to take to get there. Okay, so I once had a client where, as part of the questions we had to sense the other side, wanted to know, tell me the 7 main reasons why you fell in love with me. Tell me the 9 things you like the best about me. Explain to me why you cheated on me, right? That has no bearing in a divorce whatsoever at all, period. This is a good thing perhaps to discuss with your friends, your family, a therapist. It doesn't belong in a divorce action because lawyers cost a lot of money. And to spend time even really talking about a lot of those things is going to cost you many thousands of dollars, which will probably not advance your divorce case in any way whatsoever.
Yeah. And that's the biggest part, I can't say it enough that as you move through a divorce process, while your relationship started out of emotions, right? It probably started out of love and infatuation and desire and attraction. Where it ends is a business agreement. And when you cannot separate out the emotional hurt, that does need to be dealt with. It does need to be felt. It does need to be acknowledged and looked at. But when you can't say, hey, that's this lane over here, that's the therapist, that's the group coaching, that's the mentorship, or that's the friends, versus what is the ongoing business relationship that I need to have with this person, especially when there's kids involved, right? So stop looking at it as how can I hurt this person? But if you were in a corporate meeting room and you guys were trying to decide how you were unwinding what was once a group project that 2 people led, and now you've got to divide and conquer and you're not having that unity anymore, what does it now look like? What does that business arrangement look like?
Yes. And one more don't. Big don't. Don't be looking for the other side to say that they were wrong or that they're sorry. All right. Many hundreds of thousands of dollars to your lawyer later. You're not going to get an apology and they're not going to say that they were wrong. Probably ever. I have yet to see it. Okay. So you're not in the divorce to get an apology. We are past the apology stage. You're about to go and achieve a much better, happier life where you don't have to think about this yucky person ever again, hopefully. And at least not as your partner in that same way as they have been before. That is not the point of the divorce, and that should not really be an outcome that you're seriously considering here.
Yeah, and that is always, it's a hard point, especially in mine. There was infidelity. I wanted that apology. And the irony is that I think it was years later. I don't know that it was a full, I am so sorry for the, but there was a I made some mistakes. And it didn't do what I thought it was going to do. I think we often chase apologies because we are chasing this external validation, thinking that the external validation is what's going to help us feel better inside. But it is not the apology that helps us feel better inside. It's our own work of exploring our self-worth, of knowing what we should stand for, of knowing what we're not going to allow in our life again, moving forward. It is very much not those few words. And by the time you're at a divorce proceeding, it's too late. An apology works when you're in a relationship because somebody says, hey, I'm sorry I did this to you. I know that it hurt you. I didn't mean to hurt you, but it did. And I'm committing to not doing it again.
Amen.
Your relationship's already done in the divorce. The apology is not going to get you what you think it is, but we all chase it. We do. We all want some sort of validation. And so if you're sitting there and you're like, well, I do want that, Erica, I want that. You're wrong. That apology will make me feel better. The cool part is you can do a lot of that work before they ever say anything. So whether or not they show up and apologize and whether or not they own their part, you will still be laying the groundwork to be able to move forward and let it go while still protecting your own boundaries and protecting your own self. And so that's kind of cool. You're not relying on them anymore. They don't get to control how you feel.
That's right. I love that. You nailed it. That's exactly right. And I want you to talk to all my clients now, Erica.
Send them on over, right?
Absolutely. So shall we shift to what folks should do?
Yeah, let's go through those.
Okay. So first is really making a thorough list of all of your accounts. What have you got? Is it separate? Meaning, did you have this account before your marriage or even during, but it's just got your name on it? How much is in there? Mm-hmm. Take a look at the statements. Make sure you're familiar with what's been going on in those accounts. Write down the account numbers, especially the joint ones. There's a place where your partner keeps various important documents relating to accounts, retirement accounts, pensions, things like that. Any and all information you can collect now while you guys are still together is going to make it that much easier come divorce time, because the other side is going to have a much tougher time forgetting, quote unquote, about the existence of a variety of different accounts or retirement accounts or whatever it is. So come in fully armed to the best degree that you're able with the account information at the forefront, especially while you guys are still together. Get out your phone, take the pictures. Now it's going to be way harder to get it all later.
Yeah. And it was really surprising for me because my ex had actually taken out a loan on his 401k and I had no idea. And so in our situation, I would say, we were lucky. We were both working. We both had W-2 jobs. We both had our own individual 401ks. We both were paying for our own cars because we had our own salaries. And so overall, our finances were running parallel. We chose to divide and conquer instead of merge everything together. But I was shocked to learn that he had taken out this loan or that he had run up some other credit cards that I had no idea about because I thought that I knew everything about the finances. So before we move on to the next one, I think there's two pieces in this. One, if you're listening and you're in a relationship or you're married or things are still on the hey, it's not too bad right now. Now's the time when you want to be figuring out all those accounts, the logins, the numbers, having that somewhere in the filing cabinet so that both people have access to it, because it can be so tempting, especially if you were not the one who was working, especially if your partner was the main breadwinner, that you're like, they've just got it. I just charge the card. They take care of all of the rest. That it can be really tempting to be like, the last thing I need to worry about because he's got it covered. Like I shared in my instance, I had no idea he had taken out this loan. And we had talked about, what were we doing? Something like he was saving, his 401k was saving for our retirement and my salary was paying for our living expenses right now, right? Like that's how we started. If I had kept it that way, I would have had zero 401k, zero by the time we had left, and he had been pulling money out of it. So there's all these little things, best intentions, but then when push comes to shove, what happens? So my question for you would be then, if somebody is now in the separation or the divorce process and they didn't get those numbers ahead of time, is there anything else that they should be aware of, or how they can ask for it, or what they can do to try and clean up some of that to get the account information?
At the very least, keep an eye on the mail that comes in. What banking institutions, what financial institutions are sending mail to the house? Okay. Even if you never open up a single piece of mail, we attorneys can go ahead and subpoena information, but we need to know where to subpoena it from. We can't just hit every single financial entity ever with a subpoena. That'd be very expensive for our client. So at least keep an eye on the envelopes that are coming in the mail at the very least.
Yeah. And the reality is if somebody really wants to hide something from you, they're going to do it. Okay. And so are there exceptions out there where somebody is going to make this absolutely difficult? Yes. And hopefully that is always the minority. Hopefully for the majority of us, when people are moving through a divorce, both people, yes, they're upset, both people are reactive, but both people are also kind of sort of operating under some remaining mutual respect.
We're hopeful. We're hopeful in most cases that is right, but that's why we're looking to do the legwork early. And listen, I hope y'all don't break up. I hope your relationship emerges stronger and you get to forever ignore that folder with all of the financial information that you stored up way back when there was the TIF. But just in case, it's better to.
Exactly on that point, I had a client who they just were arguing a lot over money. He was the main breadwinner. She had chosen to stay home with the kids. That was their agreement. Well, she didn't understand the mental load or the stress that he was carrying as new expenses came in. And so sitting down and having those conversations, because they were in a rough patch around money, to create clarity and to really understand and look at the budget. What's coming in? Where is it going out? What are the bills? What do the investments look like? That was the thing that they both needed to finally get on the same page. It wasn't that like, oh, it's already deteriorating and now she needs to figure out where all the money is at. It just was like, we're fighting over this. So let's sit down, let's create transparency around it. And in their instance, it did help them be able to move forward and continue to stay together.
I love it. Something my husband and I try to do monthly, but at least quarterly, is we have a spreadsheet with every single account I've got, he's got, we've got, and we aim for quarter, month, but sometimes it's quarter. We write down the amounts in there, and that way, if there is a funky discrepancy, it's kind of really obvious. So we could talk about it, and it's made for a much stronger relationship, I'd have to say.
Hey there, it's Erica, your guide at the Crazy Ex-Wives Club. I want to take a moment to express how much your feedback means to us. Your ratings, your reviews, they are like fuel for our journey together. They not only brighten our day, but they help other women find the support and the guidance they need. Leaving a rating and review is super easy, and it makes a world of difference. If you're listening on Spotify, simply scroll down to the bottom of the podcast page and then tap on rate. If you're tuning in on iTunes, head over to the podcast page, scroll down, and click on write a review. It only takes a minute, but it could help someone else find this podcast and change their life. Your voice matters. Your feedback helps us grow. So take a moment to share your thoughts and experiences. Together, we can help spread the word to support even more women. Thank you for being a part of this journey. Let's continue to support each other and make a difference, one review at a time. What else is on the do list?
So logically think and make a plan around exactly what you're looking for. I'm surprised, I'd say, by the number of times people come to me and I ask them what they want and they say, I don't know. Right? So if we're talking divorce, things to consider. Y'all have kids. I want to talk about custody, right? So physical custody, meaning where is the child or where are the kids spending more nights, overnights per week than the other parent's house? And then legal custody is around who gets to make important legal decisions around the kids. What schools they're going to, are they going to get that procedure? Are they going to get the vaccinations? Are we going to sign them up for certain extracurricular activities? Where are they going to go to college, et cetera, et cetera? Those are legal decisions. What's that going to look like? Child support. How much? A lot of states have formulas or recommendations. Add-ons. Those are in New York and New Jersey are extracurricular activities, unreimbursed medical expenses, education-related expenses, childcare, and summer camp, right? So how are those going to be split, if at all? And then parenting time, of course. How often are the parents going to be seeing the kids? And when? Holidays, breaks, vacations, all need to be discussed around the children. Then we're going to be talking about equitable distribution or division of the assets, right? The house on the lake, the retirement accounts, the bank accounts, other financial accounts, right? Art collections, all kinds of stuff like that. That all goes into equitable distribution. Is spousal support or alimony going to be a part of this case? Is one person making a considerable amount of money more than the other? Something to talk about. Also, counsel fees. Is one party making a lot more money than the other, or is one party doing something real unkosher? Where that's something to consider as well. If one person owns a business, we're going to want to look into evaluating the business. If the parties own one or more property, we're going to look into appraising those properties as well. So those are just a couple of the things to think about logically as you make your plan.
Yeah, because I think when it gets down to like, hey, I'm sitting in your office, I'm ready to move this forward. What we know without a doubt is what we don't like. We're done with this stuff. We want the door closed. But with anything in life, we can't move forward until we start focusing on what do we want, not what are we trying to get away from? What are we trying to get out of? So that list was just, the top lines of it. And that might have felt really, really overwhelming. That's why I love the fact that divorce is a journey. It's rare that you would sit down and you would look at everything in one big fell swoop. Even for us, we wrote our own divorce decree. It didn't happen in one sitting. We kind of got through, okay, the cars, we each have one. Okay, the 401k, we each have one. Okay, the this or that, right? And we got through a lot of the big pieces, but when we got to, well, how are we going to divide the house? That was a trigger point. We had to take a pause. We had to walk away. And even with us working through it, there were things I wasn't ready for. Do you want to change your name? So sitting in, I think I walked in with my divorce decree. Here, we've made all our agreements. We did the work. We remained calm. We figured out what felt fair for both of us. And I'm sitting behind her big desk, right? And she goes, okay, well, do you want to fill out this form about changing your name? And it was tunnel vision, right? I couldn't breathe. I started sweating. Why? Because that was part of my identity. I hadn't thought through that one. I needed a little more notice than on the spot, because on the spot, I wasn't ready to sign it. Okay. Now, like 10 years later, do I wish I'd signed it? Sure. But in the moment, that was not a thing I had lined up to yet. And so you kind of start to whittle away little by little. If you're separated, start to think about all those pieces. Are you currently testing out different child parenting times to see how they work? There are so many ways that you can write it. So use the separation time to test out. Is it full weeks on and off? Is it what's the 5-2, 5-2-2, whatever? That one drives. I don't know how people do that one, but I need the same days every day. But use that time to test out what your new life is going to look like. And does it work for you? And what do you really want from it?
I love it. And then finally, what you want to do, if you're really thinking about divorce, is schedule a consultation with a family lawyer. It doesn't need to be me. Pick a family lawyer of your choice. If it were me and I was looking for a family lawyer and wasn't in the field, there are a number of mamas groups on Facebook where they're sort of geographical. I would pop in there, hey, looking for a consultation with a family lawyer, and then a bunch of folks from the community are going to drop recommendations for who you ought to talk with. Now, if you really want to chat with me, I'd love to give you a free consultation, especially if you live in New York or New Jersey. But my advice is speak with at least one professional, and a lot of them do it for free. No guarantee. I offer free consultations. Not all family lawyers do. Sit down and chat about what this is going to look like, and make sure that you are comfortable with this person before you give them lots of money. Okay? You're going to be working closely with you. Do they yell at you? You probably don't want to be yelled at. Okay? Do they make you feel like you're 7 years old again and you've been a bad girl or boy? You probably don't want to work with that one. You need to feel heard by your attorney and feel as though you can tell them the down and dirty, okay? Because that's what having a lawyer is all about. So you want to make sure it's a right fit. If it's not feeling like the right fit, we need to try again and find you the right fit family lawyer. That's very important.
Yeah, just like a therapist, you guys, there are so many out there and they're all a little different. And so while they all have, family and marriage law attached to their title, they're each going to show up differently. And so you want to find, I had consultations, I think, with five. Some of them were hard. The other thing was it was hard to get in with people, So like I was just Googling in the area, reading the blogs, checking the referral sites, reading the Google reviews, then calling and learning that it was going to be, 2-3 weeks before I could even get a free consult. Like they were booked out. And so go meet with them, talk to the different people, understand what their process is. You'll see a difference right away. I still remember. So, and I had multiple lawyers for different phases. So I had the first lawyer who was a collaborative divorce lawyer. I picked her because she felt more motherly is kind of the wrong term, but warm, supportive, right? Like she had that heart energy of, I can lead you through this and we'll figure it out together because I didn't want anybody to hurt. I didn't want to get in a fight with my ex. I wanted us to figure this out together. Well, a year later, when that was done, but the new partner was in the picture and decided the decree didn't work for her. And so she needed a new one written for her. Like we're talking all the crazy pants, like went to mediation. They walked out. The mediation person was like, we have never had this happen. We don't even know what to say to you right now. Okay. So for the phase two, it was a little bit more of a fight. I had to pick a different lawyer. So one lawyer I walked into and I felt like I had like transported back in time. It was like a big dude behind a very big desk. You almost expected him to have like a cigar in his mouth, like leaning back. He's like, oh yeah, we're just going to take it to town and get it cleaned. And I was like, where am I? Ended up hiring a different lawyer who still was very supportive for me, but had very clear boundaries and moved very fast and was like, I'm not allowing this stuff to happen to you anymore. And different lawyers for different times, depending on what you need, but find one that aligns with how you want to be treated and how you want the other person to be treated or how they need to be treated. I needed somebody who was going to toe the line for the second round of mediation. I needed somebody to support me in my decisions for the first.
Yes, I love that.
All right. So the do's and don'ts. That was a really good list, you guys. That gets you started. Now here's the gray area. How do you decide when to let it go and when to really stick it to them, right? Because when you started listing off, oh, you have the division of assets. This is when it comes up a lot, right? People start fighting over things that don't really matter to them, but they know that it'll hurt the other person. So there is a piece of your divorce where you need to figure out what matters or why am I fighting for something? Is it because it's in the best interest of the kids? Is it in the best interest of me? Or is it because I just want to hurt the other person? I had somebody stop me and they're like, oh my gosh, my sister-in-law is getting divorced. I was like, okay. I always get all the good, crazy stories, right? She's fighting for the TV and she doesn't even like TV, but it's a ginormous TV that the husband had just bought. And so they got in this huge battle, wasting all this lawyer money over the TV. Go buy a new TV if it's really that big of a deal. But we get tunnel vision and we think about just trying to hurt that person. And I would say on the flip side, the irony was in mine, my ex took nothing. He said everything hurt too much to look at it. He didn't want cups. He didn't want plates. He literally wanted to walk out and not have to deal with any of the things. Now, I was nice because he left all of his golf clubs and I was real tempted to sell that. But I didn't. I put it in a pile and told him to come back and get it because he probably actually wanted that. But hindsight's 2020. At first, I was like, yes, I don't have to go buy anything else. He's not taking anything. And about 6 months in, I was like, dang it. He has all new stuff. I still have the pans we got when we got married 12 years ago. So really think through, what matters and what doesn't matter. So how do you help your clients navigate that part?
One, what are you entitled to, right? So under the law, you're entitled to certain stuff. You should go for it. You are not a bad person because you're looking to get your fair share of what you're entitled to. Two sides. So one, don't worry about being labeled as being some kind of, vindictive, horrible so-and-so, just because you're looking to get your fair share, meaning 50% of his or her 401k from the time y'all got married to the time that the initial divorce papers were filed, because you're entitled to that, right? My mom didn't want to hurt my dad, right? So she let all kinds of fun things go. Listen to your lawyer, or at least do some research. Sit down for a consultation to figure out under the law what you're actually entitled to, and then go for it. Now, in the process of going for it, if we're fighting over toys, trains, and tools, by the way, a real case, we're in year 6 or 7 right now, and I think I'm the 3rd or 4th attorney, right? If you could have bought those toys, trains, and tools 20 times over with the amount of money that you have given to various attorneys, say screw the toys, trains, and tools and move on with your life. Okay? If you can take that money that you're giving to a lawyer over not junk, meaningful, etc., move on with your life when it's time. Consider talking to a friend or therapist or whomever and think logically. It's hard, right? Because once we're in the fight, we're in the fight. We got to win it, right? But here's the thing. Is it worth it? Is it worth years of having to see this person you don't like anymore all the time in acrimonious situations with court, with a mean lawyer on the other side? Like, do you want that to be your life, or can we let go of the things we don't need right now?
Yeah. So many key takeaways in there, right? It's that one, really look at why are you fighting for it? If you can just go buy a new one or buy and replace it, is that better? Is that better time and money spent? Okay. The other thing is that the more you stay stuck on these pieces, the longer you are trapped from moving on. Okay. And so being able to move on, part of that is about being able to let go and cut ties. Second thing is maybe you do have the right and it is legally yours, but now years later, you're still fighting over it. It's your sanity, your emotions that are paying the price. Is it worth it to walk away from that aspect, to negotiate a new agreement? How can you still win? Because, and what you said is, because when you're in it to win it, you want to win it. And that's where we get stuck. And that's where we get stuck all the time in these divorce proceedings, because it's big picture until it gets started, and then it's nitty gritty, and we lose sight of the forest for the trees. What type of relationship do you want to have with this person long term? You don't have to be friends, but if you've got kids in the middle, you are going to have to be respectful and polite. And so spending all of this time building animosity and fighting in the court system is not going to help you get to the end result you want. So if you have found yourself and you're in the middle of the divorce proceedings and you're stuck, listen to this episode again, hit repeat, go back through and really start to challenge and ask yourself, why am I continuing to fight this battle? Is this something I really need? Or is it better if I walk away? I think one of my favorite statements that I asked myself all the time, do I want to be right or do I want to be happy? And we wish that they could always be the same. But the reality is that when it comes down to some of these divorce proceedings, they are not. There were lots of times when I was right, but it was hurting me to continue to try and battle in a scene that I don't want to be that angry. And so I chose to be happy. I chose to say, you know what? I can recreate this somewhere else. I can let this go. I can move in a new direction, because that anchor, the constant fighting, the battle, the divorce, is what continues to hold us back. So I want to thank you, Leona, for joining us today and for giving us all of those amazing do's and don'ts and getting clear on how to know when to let go. And I do love all those little stories. So what did you say? Trains?
Thank you.
Trains, toys, and tools.
Trains, tools, year 7. Here we go.
Exactly. Yeah. So thank you for joining us, you guys. Until next week, take care of yourself. Take some time to reflect. Take a step back. Ask yourself, why are you continuing to fight for something? Is it that you really do need this thing? Or is it that you are stuck in that fight mode and just trying to prove that you're right? Give yourself some grace, and we'll be back next week with another great episode. And that's it. another great episode of the Crazy Ex-Wives Club, a podcast for women learning how to heal from their divorce. Tune in next week for more advice and tips to help you figure out life after divorce. And until then, give yourself grace, do the best you can, and know that this is all part of the process.